bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Dhammang sanghang namasami. So, hello everyone. Welcome to another Wednesday evening with the Clear Mountain Monastery community. It's nice to see people already putting things in the chat. And as per usual, this evening mostly proceed with a short guided meditation and then give some reflections on this month's theme in our Upasaka study group through Clear Mountain, which is the fourth chapter of the book Buddha Dhamma, which is the theme of dependent origination. So talk a little bit about that, specifically how it relates to neutral feelings in the body. And then we'll have a period for question and answers. And then we'll close up the YouTube and switch over to Zoom. And people can find the Zoom link on our Clear Mountain Monastery webpage in the calendar and events section. So we can start by just sitting together. And for this meditation, as per usual, just bring the body upright and comfortable position. And this is a stance, this stance of integrity and groundedness. You can easily imagine the long spinal cord elongating even further, the spinal column, even almost imagining it sinking into the earth, just grounding us. And then imagine a string pulling up from the top of the head, the occiput. And then when the spine is long, you can let all of your other musculature relax. And with this posture, with this way of being in the body, it really harmonizes two crucial aspects of the whole of Buddhist practice. That is the aspect of stillness or settledness, as in all of the musculature, all of our muscles just fully allowed to drape around this skeleton of our physical body. And the spine, just this upright, awake alertness. And for this meditation, ask people to bring your attention to the top of the head, or to the head as a whole, and just look for neutral feelings. So feelings which are neither pleasant, so it's us to just look at those things, the things that we like. If there's a slight breeze, to pay attention to that. If there's any kind of tingling, any kind of vibration that might feel somewhat pleasant, we naturally want to pay attention to that. Or, on the opposite end, it's easy for the mind to just latch onto and glom and just obsess over the dukkha, over the unpleasant. But for this meditation, actually just paying attention to all those feelings, starting in the head, which are just neutral. Yeah, there's just the feeling of neither hot nor cold, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. There might be some sense of tingling, because that's just how we feel the body from the inside. But it's not thrilling, it's not zest, it's not rapture, and it's not dukkha, it's not unpleasant, it's just there. This is the gray of our affective life. And feeling these shades of gray fully and without bias, without disliking them. It can be so easy to just have this obsession with the pleasant that we forget all of the aspects of our body and mind process that are just neutral, but are totally within the realm of healthy affective experience. It's totally normal. It's actually the norm to experience neutral feelings, to not be blissed out or writhing in pain for much of the body, for most of us, much of the time, if not most of the time. Yeah, just feeling the blah. This is meditation on blah, 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 blah. The non-exciting parts of our hedonic touch. And now moving down to the chest and the arms, full length of the arms from the shoulders down to the hands, and the full length of the torso from the top of the torso down to the belly. And just here again, not paying attention to any, say, pleasant sensations, the kind of coolness which you might feel in the palms, or this almost energetic, the almost aliveness of chi, some might call it, that you just feel tingling in the palms of the hands, but rather the meh kind of feelings which are the predominant feelings for most of us, most of the time, in this torso region. Just the touch of clothing. It's not especially joyous or exhilarating. It's not at all, not that unpleasant. It's not too sharp a feeling. It's not too loose a feeling. It's just, meh. This is what it is. This is neutral feeling. And it's just as valid, of course, as pleasure and pain. The pleasure and the pain that we experience. Now shifting attention down to the legs. So from the waist down to the feet. And feeling all of the neutral feelings, the neither pleasant nor unpleasant feelings. Not zooming into the pain that we might habitually experience in the knees if we're sitting in an uncomfortable posture, or any kind of pleasant sensations, but just the totally ordinary, absolutely ordinary. The Thai word is Tamada, Tamada, which comes from the Pali Dhammata. Dhamma, as in phenomenon, and ta, the phenomenonness. This is just the way it is. The body, no part of the body can experience all bliss all the time or all pain all the time. And just allowing this. And the more we can actually tune into this background static, which is constantly going on, which we just tune over or tune around or tune past in favor of the pleasant or in obsessive clenching around the pain. Yeah, learning how to be with the gray. Stay with the gray. And now going to the whole body. Feeling this blah of the head, blah of the torso, and blah of the legs. Nothing exciting here. And we're training to be able to stay with this because it's almost by definition the thing that we don't want to stay with and we don't have practice staying with. This is almost the least exciting thing, neither pleasant nor painful feeling. Pleasant is exciting because it's exhilarating and it's cool and it's refreshing, and pain is exciting just because it's relief from the boredom. But yeah, tonight we'll be looking at these boring feelings. So that's the meditation, and people can, of course, continue to meditate and continue looking as I continue talking about this oft overlooked, or so easy to overlook, aspect of our experience, the grays of our bodily experience. And I'll just continue to talk about dependent origination and how that relates to neutral feelings, and how we can actually use this practice in a liberative way. What the Buddha suggested could be a path for liberation. And again, people can can start putting questions in the chat at any point. And we'll switch over those maybe in 10 or 15 minutes. But yeah, start with a fascinating exchange between the bhikkhuni, the Arahant bhikkhuni nun, Dhammadina, and a laywoman, Visakha, at the time of the Buddha, which the Buddha then corroborated. Everything that Dhammadina said, the Buddha said, yes, well done, she said it perfectly. So I'll just be quoting her. This is from the Chula, or maybe the Mahavedala Sutta, Majjhima number 44. So the point in question, the quote is, in what way are feelings pleasant and in what way painful? So people who are familiar with a Buddhist conception of hedonic tone or affective state, basically the feelings, the bodily feelings for the most part that we experience. He breaks these down into large aspects, that is pleasant, unpleasant, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And what this question is asking is, so in what way are pleasant feelings pleasant, and what way are they painful? In what way are painful feelings pleasant, and what way are they painful? And what way are neutral feelings pleasant, and in what way painful? And we'll quickly go through the pleasant and the painful, and then we get to the meat of our discussion, the very bland and unattractive meat of neutral feeling. So the first statement is that pleasant feeling is pleasant in remaining and painful in changing. So that's obvious for anyone. We like the nice feelings when they're lasting, and it sucks when they pass. What about painful feelings? Painful in remaining and in changing. So we've got a backache if we've been standing around all day or walking around, moving, doing work all day. Then it's painful when we're in certain postures, when it's painful, and it's sukha when it passes. So when we lie down on that chair or relax our body, then that painful sensation, that pinch in our back, it's changed, and now things are pleasant. It's like the that's the pleasure of basically just pain ending. But here comes the exciting part, which is exciting because of its normativity, because of its prevalence and predominance in our daily life. So neither pleasant nor painful, and that's just, for the most part, it can be conceived of as a way to mean neutral feelings, what I've been referring to as feelings, or the meh feelings, or the gray feelings, all those things which are not exciting and are not repulsive. So I'll just use the term neutral. So neutral feeling is pleasant in occurring together with knowledge. So what does that mean? It's when you know it. It's when you have the presence of mind, when you have mindfulness and wisdom to actually know this pleasant, this these neutral feelings. And when are neutral feelings painful? Neutral feelings are painful in occurring without knowledge. So this neutral feelings, these bland feelings, these I just don't want to look at it because it's so ordinary. These are the reruns of our the script of our sensations. These are the things that it's so easy to gloss over because they're not at all pulling our attention. They're doing the opposite of pulling our attention. We don't want to look at it. But as this says, neutral feeling is pleasant when we know it. So hopefully, especially if you practice that guided meditation that I was leading at the beginning of this talk, if you practice that more regularly or for a longer period of time, you can actually tune into that. You can tune into the pleasure, and it's a mental pleasure, the mental pleasure of knowing neutral feelings. You are paying attention to something that is so oft overlooked. You are looking at something which normally blinded, self-blinded to. So, and its neutral feeling is painful when we don't know it. So it's you can see this a lot with the minor tensions, perhaps, that we just build up. Say, massage therapists of any kind know a lot about this because they see people basically throughout our daily lives. We're just blinkered to this whole range of affect, this whole range of hedonic tone, feeling, which is in between the pleasant on one side and the unpleasant and painful on the other side. This whole middle region, we just are numb to it. And there can even start growing habitual tensions that come up through just not paying attention to it. And then when you actually stop, you can know those tensions, know how you're tensing up, or know how your body is just habitually. And in that knowing, there's a degree of pleasure, of joy, of piti, and perhaps even of sukha. When you know this thing which you've been glossing over and not necessarily willfully disregarding, but disregarding for sure. And yeah, knowing it can bring happiness. So that's part of the path. So how does this relate to dependent origination? So this will be the first talk, I believe, for our month reading on dependent origination, which is basically, in Pali, it's paticca samuppada, also translated as dependent co-arising, or sometimes interdependent. Each of these has drawbacks, each of these translations. I think dependent origination is good enough. Another formulation is idapacchiyata, or basically this-that conditionality. So it's the principle of conditionality as it affects practice. So what this body and mind, what we do as humans, to the extent that there's a we or a me or an I or you, it's the dynamic that happens in the body and mind to keep us bound up in this wheel of suffering. And it can be conceived of as happening from one life to the next. That's a traditional interpretation, which is still very, very much believed in and spoken of, and has a lot of scriptural backing to go with it. But then there's also the present moment experience of how we create suffering for ourselves in this generally 12-link chain of dependent origination, paticca samuppada. So I'll just briefly go through what those links are. So the first link is ignorance. The second link is sankhara, or volitional formations. The next link, the third link, is consciousness. The fourth link is nama rupa, or name and form, or body and mind. The next link is salayatana, or the 6 sense bases, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. The next link is feeling, or Vedana, which, as we've talked about, is pleasant, painful, or neutral. And then the next link is Tanha, or craving. And the next link is Upadana, or clinging, grasping, followed by Bhava, which is coming, or becoming. The next link is Jati, birth, followed by Jara, Maranang, Soka, Parideva, Dukkha, Domanassa, or sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. So that was a lot to follow for someone who has never heard of this before. So go to Wikipedia or go to basically any Buddhist website anywhere, and you can find a list of these 12 things with a better and more comprehensible, as it will be written down, form of what I just summarized very quickly. And there should be a link in the show notes here on YouTube to the the 4th chapter of Buddha Dhamma on dependent origination. So what is all this philosophy about, you might ask? Like, how is it at all relevant for my life? There are 2 points, 2 links in this chain, which we have a degree of control over in the present moment, and that is ignorance and craving. So if we don't be ignorant, and we don't crave, then that stops the chain, or it even reverses the chain. So that, rather than leading on to the next steps, to formations and consciousness and name and form and 6 sense bases and feeling, etc., or rather than leading to clinging and grasping and becoming and birth and sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, it stops. There's a measure of the path, really. So the path is walked, the Buddhist path, the Eightfold Path, is walked in these 2 links. The degree to which we don't follow craving, which we equanimously look at this, I believe, the 7th link of tanha, the extent, of 6th link of feeling, the extent to which we're able to not respond with craving to the pleasant feelings, or respond with aversion, which is just the opposite of craving, to dukkha, or unpleasantness, and also the extent we're able to relate with equanimity towards the neutral, towards the gray, towards the blah, towards the meh. And the degree to which we're able to, with that first link, rather than operating from ignorance, we operate from knowledge, from knowing. So looking at neutral feeling is very important, and it can really actually become practice in daily life. Many people will do a 3-day retreat, a 10-day, and then they get all this benefit and a lot of pleasant feelings, and they've gone through a lot of painful feelings and have a lot of energy from that. And then they're done, and they're like, how do we do practice in daily life? And in a large measure, for most people, most of the time, looking at neutral feelings is practice in daily life. It's the ordinariness of our non-rapturous daily routines. But the extent to which, as the Arhat Bhikkhuni and then the Buddha said, neither pleasant nor painful feeling is pleasant in occurring with knowledge. So that knowledge there is the opposite of the first link of dependent origination. So when we have knowledge, and then like blinding, it's not talking about Sotapanna or an Arhat. An Arhat is not the only one who can know neutral feeling. We can do that. And when do we do that? We do that every moment of our lives. We do it every moment that we are experiencing neutral feelings, which the body, it's only a fathom long, but it's huge. It's Ajahn Mahabua talks about, he's encouraging practitioners to pay attention to mindfulness of the body or mindfulness of feeling. And he says, just go on a tour, go on vacation, and just, zoom through, experience this whole body, kind of scanning through and feeling the different parts of the body. And when you do that, when you practice that, you notice just how big this body is. No matter how fat or skinny we are, this body is huge when you learn how to pay attention. And with that hugeness comes a variety of feelings. There's painful feelings in certain parts, there's pleasant feelings in certain parts, and there are neutral feelings in a lot of parts. So when we can bring knowledge, knowing, to these neutral feelings, thus breaking the first link of dependent origination, then there is no second link of sankhara, or you could say the sankhara or the volitional formations which come from this knowing are of a potentially liberative, if not themselves part of the path place. So the sankharas that we do from knowledge are the path. And the consciousness, which comes from knowledge, which leads to volitional formation and is a knowing type of consciousness. Hello, Hassan, by the way. When we go over and know these things, when we know our neutral feelings, then we are shifting into the path. We're shifting away from this just continuous samsara-ing. When we operate from ignorance, when we're just not paying attention to our neutral feelings and just going, following after the things we like and pushing away from the things we don't like and ignoring all of this gray area, this boring area in between, then we're just continuing on samsara, continuing this churning. But when we can turn on the light and actually recognize, okay, this is just neutral feeling and it's not that bad. There's actually some pleasantness here. So yeah, from this knowledge-based consciousness, it leads to a knowledge-based name and form. The name aspects or the mental aspects, which are based from knowledge, are also part of the path. Similarly with the mind aspects of the six sense bases, and then we come back to the sixth link of dependent origination, which is feeling. And here we have another place to input in neutral feeling. And when we watch this, when we know neutral feeling, it doesn't lead to the seventh step of craving. We're not either craving for more neutral feeling. And this is what some people do. I mean, this is, I think, behind a lot of binge TV watching. Yeah, I mean, there's some measure of pleasure that you get from, the first episode of whatever it is. But, after 2 or 3 or 4 episodes, you're not getting that much pleasure, most likely, out of every episode. We're just trying to, I don't binge watch TV shows, but I'll say we, just to include myself in humanity. We're just basically trying to continue the neutral feeling. It's basically, we've been working, all week, and we just want a break. Let me just turn off. And that's basically a mind which is just willing to perpetuate and actually follow neutral feelings. And that's actually a craving for more neutral feelings. Let me just dull all of my tiny pains away and just veg out on neutral feelings, on this neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. And as Dhammadina mentioned, neutral feeling is painful when we don't know it. So yeah, when we're just vegging out and binge watching TV show, there's actually an element of pain there that I think is useful to look out for. Or test me. Am I right? Or is it a complete bliss fest for the whole 7 hours of, name your show, Game of Thrones or some other show? Sorry, I'm a bit out of it. So yeah, just looking at this, and so this is how when we know neutral feeling, it doesn't lead to craving, which then this is non-clinging based on knowledge. There's no becoming. We don't become. We're just kind of present in the present moment with this lightness and this light. And there's a type of becoming, perhaps, which can be conceived of as part of the path, because it's knowing, you're being with the one who knows, and then birth. It's a very different type of birth when it's coming from knowledge versus ignorance. And then, then the suffering and sorrow, lamentation, despair, the 12th step of this dependent origination, which comes when we know it. It can be, endured a lot more. So that's a talk about the importance of learning how to look at these, sludgy or just non-exciting aspects of our body and mind experience, and the importance of that. And the reason why it's important is because it can be liberative, and it can actually be pleasant when we learn how to do it. So offer that, and we can open things to questions. So people can ask questions in the chat. So our first question: should we try to convert all feelings, pleasant, painful, and neutral, to neutral feelings, or just stay mindful of all without clinging to any feeling, including neutral? Yeah, I would recommend the latter. For the most part, seeing and understanding feelings as they are is, the path which is most in Lasana with the Satipatthana Sutta. And you'll almost certainly always be able to find neutral feelings. And for most people, most of the time, it won't be that hard. It'll be everywhere between the tweaks of pain and the perks of pleasure that you see around the body. No need to definitely no need to try to see everything as neutral, because the grays of the world are just part of the rainbow, the spectrum of light a human body experiences. There is, in terms of not necessarily converting, there is an aspect of practice where you intentionally look at the unpleasant or the dukkha aspect of and of neither pleasant nor unpleasant. But invert everything. We just see things clearly. But good question. And remaining mindful. And as you say, the most important thing, probably any Dhamma talk, is just stay mindful without Vandana. Very, very well put. I mean, we could just excerpt those. How many got? Stay mindful without clinging. And that could be a summary of the whole Buddha Dhamma. In fact, the Buddha did give precisely that instruction on a number of occasions, but once to Mahamoggallana. Sabbe Dhamma Nalang Abhinivesa. So no Dhamma is worthy of clinging to, including neutral feeling. So next point. I can't tell the difference between a neutral feeling and no feeling. Very interesting point. I think I know what you mean. I mean, for many people, when you first start meditating, or even if you've been meditating a long, long time, there are blind spots in our apperceptive, our interoceptive awareness. Like, you just might not feel from the waist down, or you might Like, think about it. If you scan through, can I feel my head? Yes. Ears? Yes. Neck, face, arms? Yes, yes, yes. But then you get to your right forearm and you're like, where is it? Like, I don't feel anything. That no sensation. Yeah. Actually, I think it's just pose, or actually. The Buddha, when he does elaborate in a number of different ways, but this conception of these three parts, or three aspects, three manifestations of feeling Vedana, is Sukha Vedana, the pleasant, Dukkha Vedana, the unpleasant, and the Adukkama Sukha, this mid-range neutral feeling, as being like the spectrum. There's nothing other than that. So on one level, someone could give a definitive answer and say, obviously no feeling is not pleasant, because if it were pleasant, then you'd be feeling it and it would be nice. And it's not unpleasant, because if it was unpleasant, then you'd be feeling it and you'd be like, oh, I don't like this. So yeah, look at that. Yeah, that's fascinating. And for the most, I can feel most parts of my body, but thank you for this question, because I think it'll be a really rich field for investigation next time I come across a part of the body that I just don't feel. What is that? And if I keep looking at it, will it change? Will that no feeling start to glimmer or start to shake? And will I start feeling that's sukha, or that's dukkha feeling, or neutral feeling? Cool, yeah, great question. Sorry I couldn't give a more definitive answer. I've never heard the question asked, and I don't believe I've ever seen it addressed in the suttas. Okay. Good evening, Ajahn. Did you say one can crave or cling to neutral feelings? I did. That wanting neutral feelings can be an addiction. It can. And yeah. And I think for addictions which are not actually that pleasant. So like, for the most part, if someone's addicted to heroin, yeah, that's going to be, each time they shoot up, at least in the beginning, going to be pleasant. Or if someone's addicted to, ice cream or something, it's pleasant, at least in the beginning. But for other types of addictions, which are just more neutral, so like flour addiction, like FL. So many people who have food addictions or food, people say, in Overeaters Anonymous, one of the anonymous addiction recovery programs, oftentimes food craving manifests as craving for sugar, or which is obviously craving for sweets or the pleasant or the sukha, or craving for fats. But one manifestation of food cravings are craving for refined carbohydrates, so like flour, white flour. So many food addicts will cut out white sugar, but also white flour. And the white flour addiction, I think, is a perfect manifestation of craving for neutral feelings. It's basically like a numbing out. After you eat half a loaf of bread, when you eat past that, or two slices, one could make a point. If anyone has this, watch right there. What are you craving? Why are you eating that next two slices of white bread? Is it just craving the numbing? You're not even craving the pleasure of it. Or maybe you are partially craving the pleasantness of it, but there's also a craving for the numbing. And that one could probably make a good case that any kind of craving, when it comes to the level of addiction, is at least partially craving for this numbing. And what is that numbing? it's neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. Okay, the great way is not difficult for those who do not pick up. Yes. Wendy, if you could put the source of that quote, the great way is easy for those who don't cling, I think is another version that I've heard. I've not been able to internalize who it's from, the quote's from, but thank you for putting that. Yeah. Can you speak on being on the path and after a long period of doing well, abruptly flailing with strong dukkha and low mindfulness? Is this common? Suggestions to get back on course? I think it is. It is common. Yeah, I think certainly for many Westerners who I've known, I can speak for myself. You sit a meditation retreat, which is your first introduction to the Dhamma, and it's intense. You're sitting for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day, and you have some pretty profound experiences, and maybe even some deep samadhi experiences, which is maybe past life karma, which has been induced. Maybe you were a yogi in a past life, or for whatever reason, you tap into some pretty profound and pleasant mental states and physical sensations. And for a time after that, it can actually feel like the norm, that I'm really getting somewhere, like getting better and better at paying attention to the breath. I'm learning more and more about the breath. I'm learning more and more about my meditation object, and it just seems like an uphill trajectory. But then anicca happens, and the Buddha nowhere says that it's always going to be an uphill path, certainly in terms of feeling. So we can be on the path, and it's not at all the case that we're only going to experience sukha, physical pleasure, until we arrive at nibbana. Not at all. Practice is practice, whether it's dukkha or sukha or neutral. So certainly being aware of that, the extent to which we might be looking for what's pleasant. But the Buddha said, for those who are heedful, this is a Dhammapada verse. Appamadarato bhikkhu pamade bayadasiva. For a practitioner or a monk who is heedful, and who actually is very wary of not being heedful, of not practicing the path, such a one does not decline. They're in the presence of nibbana. So as long as we're putting in the causes, as long as we're trying to continue to walk the path, then regardless of how bumpy and flailing even it might feel, then we're in the presence of nibbana. And it is good to have a teacher to run these by. Like, am I flailing because I'm not practicing rightly? Or am I flailing just because samsara is in samsara and I'm just experiencing old feelings which are coming up? Unfortunately, I might not be able to go through all questions, but we'll see. I feel most of the surface of my body, but none of the feelings feel particularly neutral, more like a cacophony of changing sensations. Well, usually the word which is used is this long phrase in Pali, adukkha masukha, which is literally non-painful and non-pleasant. Cacophony of changing sensations that you describe. It's not pleasant and it's not painful. Then that likely qualifies as adukkha masukha, or which I'm using the shorthand of neutral. And then one last question, and then we'll go to our Zoom meeting. So I didn't used to be able to feel my back, so I would just imagine that I could while trying to move it. And after quite a while, I found I could feel it. That's just great advice. Yeah, I think a lot of people experience this. The more you kind of look through and experience this, the blind spots of our affective awareness, then the more we see. more we pay attention to. So, well, thanks everybody. That was a wonderful talk, and I'm sure it'll be even more. It was wonderful because you were there. It would be boring if it was just me. But I can look at the boring. I can practice. I can drink my own and learn to be with the boring. But didn't have to do that because you all made it pleasant. But now we'll switch over to something which will be even more sukha, which is the Zoom meetings. And you can go in the Clear Mountain Monastery and find that link. I think it actually will be in the show notes as well. So yeah, see people over there, and it's just a more interactive way that we can talk about what's nice. And Tan Nisabo and I will both be at St. Mark's this Saturday in Seattle, so people who are there can come, and I'm really looking forward to it. So take care, and we'll be back. I think Ajahn Nisabo he'll be in Ajahn by this time next week because it's the end of our Rains retreat, and this is his 10th. So tune in again next week, and you can hear a talk from the newly minted Ajahn Nisabo. So take care, everyone, and have a good evening.